Okay, I want to walk you through my 5 favorite features of the CS12. Now that I've got to use it for a couple days, I really have honed in on a couple of things that I like. First one is the select key, and then choosing a parameter on any plugin, effect, or anything in Logic, and then being able to control it with the fader or the pan knob. I think just that instant access is so handy and is something that I'm going to be using a lot, just that access to it. The next thing is the single point automation mode. You get that by holding the auto button and using the data to go through it. You can select it, and then any automation that's visible on the track that's selected, you can just tap the fader and it will create a point, and then you can move it to set the value. And any point that you're over, you can move the value. You can do that using the select key or turning it off. You can do that with just track volume automation. And so it's a really easy way to create automation on the fly, but not necessarily having to write it in. You can just create it maybe as if you would a mouse. This is one of the handiest things. It took me a minute to kind of wrap my brain around it. Once I did, it was just one of those things that I'm going to be using all of the time. The next thing are the markers. I like being able to add markers. I like being able to delete markers. You can do shift marker to add one where the playhead is. You can do shift marker twice to delete it. And then you can just put it in marker mode and go between the top 10 markers. And so it's a really handy way to navigate projects. I think that for me, I don't usually use more than 10, but I know some people use a ton. You can use key commands. The next thing is assigning bus destinations. You can actually just go on the track and you go into the sends mode. You can do a destination and just use the knob to assign which bus you want to, hit the confirm, and then immediately go into adjust the level. This is going to speed up setting up reverbs or headphone mixes, etc. And then we still have some of those other features like being able to control all of our plugins. The built-in ones are really well streamlined. Third-party ones work, and you can adjust those. We're going to do a video about that separately at some point. But there were a couple of things that I've heard a lot. One of the things I heard a lot about was not having a jog wheel. And it's true, there isn't a jog wheel, but you can use one of the seek buttons. And then if you hold it down and use the data menu knob, it acts like a jog wheel to a certain degree. And so it's easy to navigate. It does take both hands, but I think that that's one of those things that's really handy. I will say kind of a runner-up to my favorite 5 things would be the ability to create custom user maps of plugins. This involves, for instance, the instruments. Instead of using the smart controls, you can go through and assign a bunch of different functions to the knobs for things like instruments and MIDI effects and such. And so it's really powerful when creating custom things. It's really easy to go down that rabbit hole. One of the downsides is that it's stored with your Logic preferences and it's not easy to transfer to a different computer or send to somebody else. What would I add if I was in charge of this? First, I would make it so not just the effects are able to be accessed immediately, but that the instruments can be. I know that all of that stuff is in there already in the code. Logic makes it possible. It's just hasn't been implemented, and it's probably because many of the instruments have so many parameters it would be difficult. But that'd be one thing I would add, and the MIDI effects. So those 2 things, being able to instantly grab the MIDI effects and the instruments on this would be so helpful. Another thing I would do is make it so that the 12 rotors could be just turned into faders. So I can do multiple levels on multiple tracks from those. I know they're not faders, but you could actually do quite a bit with those if you could just assign them, say, across 12 different faders in the project. Could be an interesting way to do it. Perhaps one of the only features on this that I still don't fully grasp the usefulness of is the tempo knob. Why we would need a knob just for the tempo is still something that perhaps somebody thought would be really valuable. However, it's just not something that I find that I will probably ever be using. And I would rather have the zoom knob be in a more accessible place. Otherwise, I'm seeing nothing but an upside with this device. There's so many great things about it. It's subtle how much I'm finding myself using it. It's not taking over my life. It's not taking over my workflow. It's just enhancing it and making it better. And for that, I think it's worth pretty much every penny. Okay, hope this was useful, and more coming about this in the future. I think we're going to use it for a week or two and see exactly where we land with it.